In FPL this season, there is such a big pool of players that we're able to pick from, so it does mean that we're missing a few out. In today's video, we're going to go through 10 players that you have specifically asked to be discussed more, that you're not seeing on my channel and other pieces of content that you're watching. They are not being discussed nearly enough. So I've taken the top options, including the likes of Erling Haaland and Cody Gakpo as well. We'll talk about some of those players. We'll talk about why they're maybe not being spoken about and actually which of them you really should be considering for your Game Week 1 teams. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim, and subscribe if you are new around here as well. Before we dive into the actual video, a couple of bits of housekeeping, of course. Make sure you are in the league. As we get closer to the start of the season, we are raising money for charity, 10p to charity for every single one of you who finishes inside the top 25k. And we are setting an incredibly ambitious target of trying to hit 200,000 subscribers by the Game Week 1 deadline, which means I need over 20,000 in just over a week. So if you fancy supporting the channel, about 60% of you watching won't be subscribed. If you want all the content during the season, during preseason, if you're finding it useful, make sure you click that button. But the number one player that I got asked to discuss was Erling Haaland of Manchester City. He is 14 million and he is in under 20% of teams. A player who notoriously starts well. He scored 10 goals in his opening 4 matches in the Premier League last season. And his opening 4 matches this season are Wolves, Spurs, Brighton and Man United, with 2 of those being at home. I don't think the fixtures are groundbreaking. I do think some of them are quite good. And in Game Week 6, he does then have Burnley at home after Arsenal away in Game Week 5. The online data is really strong. So you can see he averages 1.3 big chances per 90. He's averaging 0.8 XGI per 90. The issue for me is the amount you're having to spend on him, and just particularly because forwards are not getting that many bonus for penalties and stuff. So if he just gets a penalty, he's not, as groundbreaking as maybe he was. The amount of times he was hitting double, triple returns outside of that opening part of the season last year were not really worthwhile when you've got a 7.5 million forward or a 9 million forward in someone like a Watkins or a Gyökeres potentially further down the line, getting pretty close to his overall points. The thing that you do need to consider is the captaincy, is how many weeks in that first 6 are you likely to put the captaincy armband on him. If I have Mo Salah in my team, Mo Salah is my captain Game Week 1, Game Week 2, Game Week 4, Game Week 5 at a minimum. So that doesn't really leave that much space for Erling Haaland. But if you wanted to go with Haaland instead of Mo Salah, that would change the dynamics of it a little bit. But it's the large amount that people are having to pay without having the real need to captain him in the opening 5 weeks, despite how good some of those fixtures are, that are starting to put people off for the 14 million price tag. Plus, in the second half of the season, he just didn't score enough goals to really warrant that. There were so many of the cheaper forwards that were getting close to him, but he does tend to start well. We've seen it in his career at Manchester City already. He does tend to do well. I don't think he's a bad pick at all, but I don't think he's a better pick than Mo Salah. And I think that's for us a lot of what it boils down to, that you're looking at Haaland and Salah taking up 28.5 million of your budget this year if you go with them both. Players like Rodgers, who are cheap enablers, players like Palmer, they're all so expensive now that if you're going with Haaland and Salah, you're really cutting down what you can do elsewhere in your squad. I don't think it's impossible. And actually, between now and the Game Week 1 deadline, we will talk about a Haaland-Salah draft and a Haaland-Salah-Palmer draft, which is very possible. But with so many people wanting to opt for Mo Salah, that is why he's not being spoken about as much. He should be in the conversation. He should be spoken about more than he is, but I can understand why his ownership hasn't hit the high heights that maybe he has in the past few seasons. Now, staying at Manchester City is another interesting option, and that is Omar Marmoush, who's come in at 8.5 million and now as a midfielder as well. So he'll get the extra point for a goal and the extra point for a clean sheet as well, which is a pretty nice addition to him. And actually, when he came into Manchester City, he did hit the ground running quite a lot, but he was quite popular in FPL last year because of the amount of minutes he played whilst Erling Haaland was out injured and he did play up front. We are expecting him to play more reserved, a little bit in that number 10 role. And the issue with that is they do have a lot of players who can play that position. They've now got Foden, who is expecting a bit of a bounce back. They've got Cherki in there. Then they've got a lot of their new wingers that they can play. They could play Foden out wide. They've got Savinho. They've got Doku. There's a lot of attacking firepower, which for 8.5 million, just going into the start of the season, it does feel like we don't fully know that Marmoush is going to be nailed enough to go into our Game Week 1 teams. If we see in the next couple of preseason games that they've got between now and game week 1, that it is Haaland and it is Marmoush in the number 10 now that Kevin De Bruyne is not there anymore, then absolutely Marmoush should be back on our radars. But one of the things I spoke about in my top tips video is picking players who are nailed, picking players who are going to play minutes every single week. And I don't feel like we have that reliability at the moment for someone like Marmoush. And then he's competing with very popular players in the likes of Watkins in your forward line, in the likes of Gyökeres in your forward line, in the likes of Wirtz, who's so highly owned, and in the likes of Bruno Fernandes, who are all very similar priced to Marmoush, and just feel like they have more solidity and more security in terms of knowing what you're going to get with him. He was a great option last year, but when was the last time we had a Manchester City midfielder that we really liked? Probably a couple of years ago with Foden. And until we see that, I don't think it's worth a gamble when there are other players at the same price who just feel much safer for the start of the season. Now, before we get into the next player that we're going to talk about, this video is being sponsored by Club once again. The football manager game, the free-to-play manager game that was actually the number 3 ranked sports free-to-play app on my app store as well. Basically, it's a cross between Ultimate Team and FPL, that every few hours you get given a pack, as you can see up on screen now. If I click meet now, we're going to go and get a player, and you have the ability to then upgrade your squad. So who are we going to get? Base, core, you want, a goalkeeper. I've got Man City goalkeeper. Is that going to be Trafford though? Oh, it's going to be Ortega. Right, the reason I'm so excited is because goalkeepers are incredibly difficult to get, but I've got a goalkeeper, finally. I think that's the first one I've packed. But Ortega is not going to play, so I'm going to have to reject him and still hope to get a goalkeeper later down the line. So this is my squad at the moment, some good defenders. And over the course of the season, you have the ability to upgrade your squad. You get sort of upgrades in terms of transfer budget and things like that. So I actually packed some really good players over the past couple of days in Odegaard and Pedro Neto, but I don't have the budget in my squad to actually go and allow me to keep them. So I've had to get rid of them. I also have Levi Colwill, who I'm going to have to release because it looks like he's injured as well. So that will free up a bit of salary cap. We do also have a league here which has over 300 of you in already. Thank you all for joining from the last video. The link to download the app is in the description. The code is down there as well. The code is up on screen. Please make sure you get in. And the longer you're in before the start of the season, the better chance you have to build up a good squad, hopefully like I am getting to now. Now, moving into defense, and some of these attacking wing-backs, full-backs that we're looking at have kind of been forgotten because of the addition of defensive contributions. I'm not seeing Munoz in many drafts. I'm not seeing Cucurella in many drafts. I'm not seeing Liverpool full-backs in many drafts. And I'm not seeing Pedro Porro in many drafts. And a lot of you have asked me to discuss him as actually a better option than someone at a similar price like your Forest defenders, or instead of a Van de Ven, who people are looking at if they're going for a Spurs defender. When you have a look at the opening fixtures, they're pretty nice. You could play them at home to Burnley, at home to Bournemouth, away at West Ham, away at Brighton, away at Wolves. And with sort of 0.22 expected goal involvement per 90 last year and almost 0.3 actual attacking returns per 90, you can really understand why you'd want to go and have a look at them. And we are expecting Spurs to be a better defensive output this year under Thomas Frank compared to 17th in the league where they were last year. The only teams below them were the teams to get relegated from the league. So you can understand why people don't want a Spurs defender. But under Thomas Frank, we definitely are expecting them to get better. And if that does happen, unfortunately, with the horrific injury that looks like James Maddison is going to be out for a lot of months until at least 2026, Pedro Porro might end up mopping up more of the bonus points and assists from things like set pieces. That's what I was trying to get out. Corners, free kicks, all of that. Porro is likely to take more if James Maddison is not in the team as well. So there are definitely reasons why Porro will be a better asset this year than he was last year. I just think we need to wait and see. Spurs still don't look really like they're flowing as much as we'd want them to. The price is still a little bit more when you have more reliable options in the likes of the Forest defence. And he's very close to all those 6 million defenders as well. I do think he will be an option, but I just want to see Spurs start the season well before I go and get him. If you want him, I actually think he's a very decent differential punt for the start of the season, but I tend to be safe at the beginning and Porro doesn't fit that. Next up is a cheap forward in Strand Larsen, of course, at Wolves. Without Cunha being there, there is a sort of general expectation that Strand Larsen will fill in the void for a lot of the goals and sort of the focal talismanic properties that we did see Cunha have last season. One big thing that people are saying with Strand Larsen is he's likely to be on penalties. He's taken 3 penalties in his senior career, none of them since 2021 when he was playing in the under-21s. And Arias, who is just signed for Wolves, has 9 out of 12, including taking one in the Club World Cup last summer. So it's definitely not guaranteed. I mean, Wolves basically don't get any penalties anyway, so that shouldn't be a massive pull factor whether you go with him or not. He is a really nice option, and people are going with Welbeck, and I've generally said that I prefer Welbeck to going with Strand Larsen for the start of the season. But game week 1, the fixture they have is at home to Manchester City. From game week 2 onwards, the fixtures are actually really nice. And he could easily score against Manchester City. They are not a watertight defence. We don't know whether the likes of Rodri is going to be available for the start of the season. So actually, as I've dived into this a bit more, he's probably my favourite 6.5 million forward. I do think Fulkrog at West Ham is actually a better option than both Strand Larsen and both Danny Welbeck as well. But if you look after game week 1, again, there's lots of players like your Bournemouth assets, your Crystal Palace assets, and someone like Strand Larsen that people are being put off because of their game week 1 fixtures. But the underlying data is good, almost 4 expected goal involvement per 90. We're expecting him to mop up more chances now that they don't have Cunha there. But without Cunha and without Aït-Nouri, those are 2 of their big attackers, creative attackers, likely to not be there. And they haven't signed a replacement really yet. It was interesting to see exactly how Arias hits the ground running in the first couple of games. So I don't mind him. I think he's a good pick. If he's in your team, that's absolutely fine. In and around that price, there's not much to really pick between them. But I do think we need to temper expectations of maybe what we'll see from Wolves this year. Moving into defence, the DEFCON beast that is Tarkowski at Everton isn't really being seen in many drafts at all. Now, when you look at the opening fixtures, they start with Leeds away, Brighton, Wolves, Villa, and West Ham at home in the opening 6. You could definitely see them keeping a couple or 3 clean sheets in that first 6 games, plus the defensive contributions, and you never know, an odd attacking return you could definitely go and get with him. The issue with Tarkowski, Branthwaite is not fully ready for the start of the season. And David Moyes has also said that as a team, they don't feel ready for the start of the season. They are a club that notoriously starts slow. In both the last 2 campaigns, they've kept just 2 clean sheets in their first 10 games. So that's 4 in their opening 20 combined, which doesn't really bode that well for them starting well this year. I do think there'll be times that we look to own Tarkowski. And if in their final preseason games, they start to look strong, I do think we could look to go there because I expect Everton to be stronger, whereas someone like a Nottingham Forest, we might see a little bit of a regression from. But I am just a little bit cautious that Everton do tend to start quite slowly. So 5.5 million, despite how good his defensive contributions can be, I'm not sure I want to pay it, and I'd rather have someone else at that price. But given how much he was a beast last year, if you think Everton will start strongly this year as they ended last year, you should have Tarkowski in your team. Next up is another defender whose ownership is only going to go up and up and up between now and the start of the season. Wan-Bissaka, his teammate on the other side, is about 30% owned, and Diouf for me is a better pick than him. They are playing a slightly imbalanced system, but generally both wing-backs are getting very far forward, but Diouf has got the much better crossing ability, and with the new changes to the assist rule that we've got this year, if wingers are just whipping the ball in, even if it takes deflections, you're more likely to get the assist than maybe you've had, which will definitely benefit Diouf. If you've watched any of the preseason games for West Ham recently, he's been so good. That crossing ability that he has, he's also scored goals in his previous club as well. As you can see, he had 0.38 expected goal involvement per 90 at his previous club. Now, he has come from a league that is slightly less competitive than the Premier League, but he's already hitting the ground running. And at 4.5 million, if you need him, for example, Sunderland on the opening day as part of a bench boost, he could be really good. Now, what I would say to temper expectations generally on West Ham is I don't love the opening fixtures. Away to a newly promoted team on the opening day, I don't love. Then you've got Chelsea, Forest, Spurs, Palace, and Everton, all teams who I'd probably expect to score against West Ham. So although I really like him and I think he's a better pick than any of the other West Ham defenders, I'm actually a little bit cautious of what the fixtures might bring from a defensive point of view. You're probably hoping for attacking returns. Moving into midfield at Chelsea, there is so much talk about João Pedro and talk about Cole Palmer as well, and very little talk about Enzo Fernandes, who was a fantastic budget option for us last year. The opening fixtures do look great, although actually Palace on the opening day as a Chelsea fan, I'm a little bit nervous of. I think Enzo Fernandes is a fine pick. I don't think he's particularly exciting, and I do think there's a little bit of a concern with us being linked to the likes of Xavi Simons and Garnacho his number 10 advanced role that we've seen from him at the end of last season and at points earlier on in the season as well, where he got a lot of returns, are likely to drop off compared to what we're expecting. If we see in the couple of preseason games on Friday and Sunday that Enzo is playing really far forward and Chelsea get to the deadline and they haven't signed a Simmons and they don't look like they're going to sign a Garnacho and he's going to keep that role in an advanced position, I think for the opening run that Chelsea do have, he should be worth considering. The issue is as well, though, a defender in the likes of Sanchez, Palmer and João Pedro all feel like better options than Enzo at the moment. So just for a combination of factors, he tends to fall away a little bit and there's just uncertainty of him not being a flashy, exciting winger. But if we see over the next week that he doesn't play reserved, he's in that number 10 role and Chelsea don't sign any additional attacking players, he should definitely be back on radar as he was as a potential cheaper option to someone like a Palmer. Moving on to Bournemouth, and we're going to Evanilson. And just like Strand Larsen, because of the fixture on the opening day being away to Liverpool, a lot of people are not looking at Bournemouth players. The other reason actually is a couple of their players in Christie and also particularly Kluivert are nowhere to be seen in pre-season. They feel like a team that is not ready for the start of the season. They have not had good pre-season performances. They've lost a lot of defenders. Players are not back and we are just a week away. For all those reasons combined, I don't really like Evanilson as a pick. I prefer the 6.5 million options in the forward line. I prefer the 6 million options or finding 0.5 and going up to the 7.5. Bournemouth feel like a real wait and see. Some of their opening fixtures are good. And there was a point where I really did like them as potential options and I thought they were great differentials. But as we've got closer to the start of the season, looking at the way that they're playing, looking at the amount of players that they have lost, particularly defensively, I just don't expect Bournemouth to be as good this year. I expect to see a bit of a drop-off in performances in general. And Evanilson is just naturally not a good finisher. His data has been all right, but if you've watched him in pre-season, he misses so many chances, which is so infuriating. And it's also not very good for his bonus points as well. I just think there's other good options that you could start with. Next up is Eze at Crystal Palace. The big thing for a lot of us is he is still linked with a move away, particularly to Arsenal. And if that doubt is still in place by game week 1, I don't think you can own him. But I'm going to speak as if he's staying. And if we're going to get an Eze at Crystal Palace in the forward line alongside Mateta and Sarr, then Eze should be on radar. 7.5 million, though, is a lot to pay for a player who you might want to rotate based on fixtures. Because if you do look at some of those opening 6 fixtures, there are probably 2 or 3 games where you don't expect Palace to score that many goals. So someone like a Sarr that you could maybe rotate with another midfielder in and around the better fixtures feels slightly better. Although we know at the end of last season how much of a better asset Eze was compared to Sarr. I would say Morgan Rogers, although he's a bit of a doubt now. But there are better options. And if you look at a forward line, someone like a Chris Wood, someone like a Slanky, someone like a João Pedro, are they better options than Eze? No, it's probably quite close. But I would prefer Mateta, I think, just because he's been on hot form in pre-season. The minutes look back to his strongest, which we saw earlier on in the season. I don't think Eze is a bad pick. I just think people are using the early combination of fixtures and the combination that he might go to Arsenal as enough not to pick him and enough not to be the best midfielder at his price point. But again, if we get to the deadline and he's staying, he is going to tick along. He actually underperformed last year and a lot of us owned him in game week 1. He has had a price hike given how he ended last season. He is one that should be spoken about more and will get a lot of plaudits between now and game week 1 if the rumours of him potentially getting a transfer die away. And player number 10 is Bruno Fernandes of Manchester United in at 9 million. Now, with them looking like they're going to sign Sesko, it is likely that they probably will go with Cunha, Sesko and Burmo front 3. And Bruno Fernandes will then, as a result, drop into midfield. Now, he is really good for defensive contributions when he plays in that role, but you don't really want Bruno Fernandes just for defensive contributions. But if he was getting 2 points for appearances, 2 points for defensive contributions, and then picked up an assist, he often gets bonus with that as well. You could very easily, with him being central midfield, hit a 7-pointer almost every single week, plus the odd penalty and thing like that as well. I really like him. The opening fixtures, maybe not quite as good, and maybe Manchester United are just a wait and see. But I wouldn't be surprised if Manchester United finish 5th in the Premier League with the signings that they've made. It's a bold claim. And I wouldn't be surprised if Fernandes was in the top 3 scoring midfielders in the game this year. I do wonder if he's a better pick for the start of the season than Wirtz, but it's a real punt, right? Because Fernandes is much more low owned. Wirtz is a much bigger risk if you don't go with him. And do we want to do that and take that punt for the start of the season? He's also slightly more expensive as well when they've got Arsenal, City, Chelsea all in their first 5 games. I really like Fernandes. If I end up with Wirtz in my draft, I might try and find money for Bruno. It might be Ollie Watkins as well, but he should be considered because that Manchester United attack have surely got to score goals and he's always in the focal point. And even if he's playing central midfield rather than in number 10, he'll probably get some minutes up there. He's on set pieces, he's on penalties. He's just been so consistent for such a long time. And actually a little bit of a bonus one. I think this is number 11. It's going to be Cody Gakpo of Liverpool. Now, at the time of recording, they haven't bought Alexander Isak. There are still links there. If we get to game week 1 and there is still no sign of Alexander Isak starting, and it looks like Ekitike is going to be through the middle, Wirtz in the number 10, then maybe we can start to have a look at Gakpo, as he has been great during pre-season. His minutes last year were a little bit of threat because, of course, he was rotating with Luis Diaz out on that left-hand side. But if we do get to game week 1 and they sign Isak, Ekitike likely to go out into the left-hand side. You also might push Wirtz out there a few times. His minutes become a lot more risky if they do sign Alexander Isak because of what it can do to Ekitike's minutes and positioning, and actually he can play out on that left-hand side. But if they don't, some of those opening fixtures are great. And I do wonder at 7.5 if he's actually just as good as Wirtz. Now, a lot of what's been going on in pre-season, Gakpo has been getting the end product, but so much has been going through Florian Wirtz in their midfield. And I do think over the course of the season, Wirtz will be worth his price tag more than Gakpo will. And also with the money they spent on Wirtz, you're pretty secure. You know what you're going to get in terms of minutes, whereas Gakpo is a little bit up in the air. But if you want a Liverpool second attacker alongside Salah, or you're not going Salah, you can't afford Wirtz. At the moment, Gakpo looks great, but let's just keep an eye on what happens with a few other attacking transfers, particularly Alexander Isak. And just to wrap up, a few general discussion points with a lot going on in pre-season. I am just going to rattle through these, and I might put this at the end of pretty much a lot of my videos between now and the start of the season, because as pre-season goes on over the weekend, there is going to be a lot of things that change. Am I not concerned about Nottingham Forest dropping off from last season? This is a question that has been asked a lot in all of my videos. The answer is yes, particularly from an attacking point of view. It does make me a little bit concerned that Chris Wood or someone, they could have their goals dry up. But even Chris Wood at Burnley was scoring 10, 15 goals pretty much consistently. So I think that'll be fine. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try and be a little bit more structured and score less goals. And I think that, they could easily keep 10, 15 clean sheets, probably not 15, 10, 12 clean sheets, plus the defensive contributions that some of their defenders are getting. I do think they're absolutely fine. And with the opening fixtures, I feel like it is worth a risk. In pre-season, they've played 6 games, 4 clean sheets, and just scored 1 goal, though, which I can understand is a little bit concerning from the attacking point of view. Next up is surely Salah can't do it again. He seems to be saying that every year we say that about Salah, and then he tends to do it. The high ownership, the high captaincy for the start of the season means I just really don't want to go without him. There's not much to it more than that. Next up is a few bits of injury news. Of course, it looks like Maddison is going to be out for quite a while. What does that do for the rest of the Spurs assets? I mean, they might look to sign someone. Perhaps Sarr at 5 million becomes even more nailed as a box-to-box midfielder. Kulusevski, when he comes back, should go straight back into the team, but it makes someone like a Kudus and a Brennan Johnson even more nailed for minutes because they just have less attackers in those positions. And maybe a Wilson Odobert at a cheap price you could also look at, but it does make them probably a worse team because they need a creativity hub in that midfield, but someone like a Kudus should have to step up. Next is Levi Colwill at Chelsea. Again, looks like he's going to be out for a while. First thing is, I don't think it unlocks any of the centre-backs that you can pick because I do think there'll be a bit of chopping and changing until we find it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is out for a while, which tends to be what's being rumoured, that we might sign a replacement in that left centre-back position. So I do think it makes Chelsea's defence naturally worse. I think I'm going to go with Sanchez in goal, but I might not bother with any Chelsea defence because without Colwill, I do expect us to get worse. If you do want a Chelsea defender now, either Cucurella at left back or you go with Sanchez. I wouldn't pick anyone else. Rodgers did limp off after being on the pitch just 3 minutes in the Aston Villa friendly on Wednesday evening. It does likely mean that if he's out, Daniel Marlin will likely get increased minutes, but the early reports are that it's nothing serious. He's meant to go for scans on Thursday. There might be a bit more news before even I upload this, but he is expected to not be out very long. The worst case scenario for this is he's a doubt for game week 1, which means you can't pick Marlon because eventually you might lose his place because of the minutes and the new forward they've signed. But you also can't pick Rodgers because he might not play game week 1. So at the moment, I wouldn't be advising going with Rodgers, although if we get a positive update, hopefully he's back. And I also wouldn't be going with Marlon as well. Looking at the 4 million goalkeepers, Darlow might play game week 1 at Leeds if their new goalkeeper isn't fully ready. Dubravka has officially signed for Burnley, who is one that you could go and look at and actually does boost the potential bench boost. The other thing to note is I'm recording before the Spurs game. There is a chance that if Kinski starts that game, that Thomas Frank might just prefer him as the goalkeeper. So keep an eye on that one as a potential third 4 million option. I don't even know. The next one is Palmer worth it? And I've seen so many people say, well, Palmer is great. And then actually people say, well, he wasn't good at the end of last year, so do we really want him? I just think the fixtures that Chelsea have, you do want a nailed piece of that Chelsea attack. And at the moment, Palmer is the only really reliable option. He's also playing at the Club World Cup. He played back in a position that he did at the beginning of last season. He was so good for attacking returns. And I do think having other good attackers like a João Pedro in the team can draw defenders away and give Palmer a bit more space, and he'll not be double or tripled up on from an attacking and defensive point of view. So I do still think he's worth it. And finally, we spoke about Haaland, we spoke about Marmoush, but lots of asks about the likes of Cherki and Reinders now at Manchester City. The last time we had a nailed Manchester City midfielder that wasn't someone like a Rodri or a Foden a couple of years ago, I can't take the gamble on them. I know Reinders' goal scoring ability, I know Cherki's attacking output have been great, but I just don't think we know for certain. Foden is going to come back to his best at some point, and I can't take the risk for the start of the season when there are other good options at both of their price. So, hopefully, I feel like over the past few days, we've now fully covered pretty much every single player in the game that you would want to consider picking. If there's still anyone else left, drop it all in the comment section down below. As I said, this video is sponsored by Club, so make sure you're joining that and get in my league before the game week 1 deadline. We are also chasing 200,000 subscribers by the game week 1 deadline. Hopefully we hit it on the stream, which would be amazing. So if you want to support the channel, please make sure you subscribe. Leave any questions you have down in the comments. We're a week away from the start of the Premier League season. We are really raring to go. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for so much of the support and the love about the detail and time that's taken for the videos this week. Lots of detailed content. So if you haven't watched the best defenders, midfielders, forwards, chip strategy videos that I've done over the past couple of days, please go and check them out, because hopefully these 5 videos that we've done, or those 4 videos, have just covered everything you need to know to be ready for the start of the season. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.